Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. The announcement came on a quiet evening, the kind where nothing seemed out of place. We had finished dinner, the plates still on the table, when she set her fork down and folded her hands tightly. Her voice trembled, but her eyes carried something sharper than fear. "I'm pregnant," she said. Then, after a pause that felt longer than it was, she added, "But I need a DNA test to know if it's yours or Kyle's." The words hit harder than anything I'd ever heard. My chest tightened, but I didn't shout. I didn't demand details. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, let the silence stretch, and said calmly, "No problem." Her face flickered with confusion. Maybe she expected me to explode, to accuse, to beg for clarity. Instead, I kept my tone steady. "We'll schedule a test, we'll find out." She swallowed hard, nodded quickly, and looked away. That was when I knew. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't an accident. She had already been living in a split reality, one where I was her partner in public but not her only choice in private. And now, the truth had surfaced in the most undeniable way. That night, she barely spoke. She retreated to the bedroom early, leaving me sitting at the table, staring at the empty plates and replaying her words. Kyle. A name she had mentioned before, casually, as a coworker. Someone she claimed was harmless. Someone she insisted I had no reason to worry about. But now his name carried weight. He wasn't just a shadow anymore. He was a possibility. One that could alter the course of my life. I didn't sleep much. My thoughts churned, but beneath the storm was a surprising calm. I realized I was standing at a crossroads. I could unravel in rage, or I could let her dig her own grave while I stayed steady. I chose the second path. The next morning, I woke early, brewed coffee, and sat across from her as she sipped hers. She looked fragile, her hands trembling slightly. "Do you hate me?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "No, I just want the truth." We scheduled the test together. The clinic gave us an appointment for the following week. She seemed relieved, as if the act of making it official meant the tension was temporarily lifted. But in the days leading up to it, I noticed everything differently. Her late-night texts, the way she angled her phone away from me, the distracted look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. I didn't confront her. Instead, I started documenting. I checked our joint account, noting unusual charges, hotel stays, dinners at places we'd never gone together. I kept track of her schedules, the sudden work events that never lined up with her company's calendar. Piece by piece, I built a picture that told me more than her words ever could. She, on the other hand, acted as though nothing had changed. She made dinner, laughed at shows, even curled up next to me on the couch, trying to pretend we were still us. But every laugh sounded hollow. Every touch felt forced. The more she pretended, the clearer it became. Her world was crumbling, and she was trying to hold it together with lies. The night before the appointment, she broke down. Sitting on the edge of the bed, tears streaming, she whispered, "I don't know how this happened." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "You don't know how it happened?" I asked quietly. She shook her head, sobbing. "It was a mistake. I never meant for it to go this far." I didn't comfort her. I didn't tell her it would be okay. I simply said, "Tomorrow we'll know." The day of the appointment, the clinic was cold and sterile, the kind of place where emotions feel out of place. We sat in the waiting room, her hand fidgeting with her phone, my hands resting calmly on my knees. When they called us in, I walked beside her, steady as stone. The doctor explained the process, his voice professional, detached. She nodded nervously, biting her lip, while I kept my face neutral. The test was quick, routine, over before the tension could break. The doctor told us results would take a few days. We left the clinic in silence, walking to the car like strangers. On the drive home, she finally spoke. "What if it's yours?" she asked softly. "Then I'll be a father," I said simply. "And if it's not? Then I'll be free." She didn't answer. Those next few days were some of the longest of my life. But I didn't let myself unravel. I went to work, met friends for coffee, lived each day as though the weight hanging over me wasn't there. Inside, though, I was preparing, not just for the result of the test, but for the aftermath of her choices. I opened a separate bank account in my name only, moving my paycheck deposits there. I secured important documents, passport, titles, insurance policies, placing them where she couldn't reach. I called a lawyer, explained the situation, and received advice that steeled me further. Meanwhile, she seemed to shrink. The confident woman who once walked through life like every room belonged to her now moved cautiously, her eyes darting, her shoulders slumped. She tried to reach for me at night, whisper apologies half-formed, but I kept my distance. Words without truth are just noise, and I had no patience left for noise. Then the call came. The clinic had our results. We scheduled a meeting to review them in person. She looked pale as we drove there, her fingers clutching the seatbelt like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I kept my eyes on the road, calm, composed, ready for whatever came next. We sat in the doctor's office, waiting as he flipped through the file. Her breath was shallow, her hands trembling. My heart pounded, but my face gave nothing away. The doctor looked up at us, his expression unreadable, and opened his mouth to speak. And what he told us in that moment changed everything. The doctor's office felt too small for the weight of the words about to be spoken. He glanced down at the file once more before looking up, his tone clinical but firm. "The results are conclusive," he said. "There is no genetic match. This child is not yours." Her gasp filled the room like a scream. She covered her mouth with both hands, eyes wide, tears already spilling. My chest tightened, but I didn't move, didn't flinch. I simply sat back, folded my hands, and nodded slowly. I had prepared myself for this moment. Somewhere deep down I had already known. She turned toward me instantly, reaching for my arm. "Jake, please, this doesn't mean anything. It was a mistake. It doesn't have to change us." I pulled my arm back gently but firmly. "It changes everything," I said quietly. The doctor excused himself, leaving us in silence. She collapsed into the chair, sobbing, her body shaking. I stood, thanked the doctor's assistant at the front desk, and walked out into the bright sunlight. She stumbled after me, pleading, her voice cracking. "Please don't leave me. I'll fix this. I'll make it right. You can still raise this baby. We can still have a family." I stopped at the car door and looked at her. "You didn't just betray me," I said. "You betrayed the future we were building, and you expected me to accept a child that wasn't mine as if your lies were normal. No, I won't live that way." She froze, her words dying in her throat. For once, she had nothing to say. The drive home was silent. She sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, tears sliding down her cheeks. I kept my eyes on the road, already thinking about the next steps. Over the next few days, the weight of the truth settled in. She tried everything. Apologies, promises, even threats. She begged me to consider the bigger picture, as though her betrayal could be painted over with time. I refused to engage. My silence drove her frantic, and the more she tried to claw back control, the more it slipped from her grasp. I began moving forward with my plan. I finalized the transfer of all my accounts into my name only. I contacted my lawyer again, who assured me that with the DNA results, her infidelity, and my financial precautions, she had no leverage left. If she tried to come after me, she would lose. Meanwhile, she grew more desperate. I overheard her on late-night calls with Kyle, her voice low but frantic. From the fragments I caught, it was clear he wasn't interested in stepping into my shoes. He had been fine as a secret, but now that the truth was exposed, he was backing away. She was left stranded, rejected by the man she risked everything for, and unwelcome in the life she thought she controlled. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had wanted security, wanted to play both sides, wanted to keep me while sneaking around with him. Instead, she had ended up with nothing. The breaking point came at a dinner with mutual friends. We had agreed to meet weeks earlier, back when the facade of our relationship was still intact. She begged me not to cancel, saying it would look suspicious. I agreed, though for reasons she didn't expect. I wanted the truth to breathe in the open, not suffocate behind closed doors. That night we sat at a long table with 6 others, laughter and chatter filling the air. She tried to act normal, smiling, laughing too loudly, resting her hand on my arm as though nothing had changed. But I didn't play along. When someone asked about the wedding plans we'd been making, I simply said, "There won't be a wedding. She's pregnant, but the child isn't mine." The table fell silent. Forks froze midair. Her face drained of color. "Jake," she hissed, her voice trembling. "Why would you say that?" "Because it's the truth," I said evenly. Gasps circled the table. She stammered, tried to laugh it off, but the weight of my words crushed the act. Our friends exchanged glances, some angry on my behalf, others stunned into silence. She grabbed her purse and fled the restaurant, tears streaming down her face. I finished my meal calmly, thanked the group for their company, and left. From that moment on, the story wasn't mine to tell anymore. It spread through whispers, through shocked conversations, through the quiet judgment of those who once admired us as a couple. She tried to spin it, to claim I had overreacted, but the DNA results weren't just rumor. They were proof, and proof is louder than lies. She stopped coming home after that night. I found her things slowly disappearing from the apartment. Clothes, toiletries, photos. I didn't stop her. I let her take whatever she wanted. Every item she removed was another reminder erased, another weight lifted. Meanwhile, I thrived. My promotion came through at work. My focus sharpened, my energy returned. Freed from the constant drain of her deceit, I poured myself into projects I had been neglecting. I joined a local club, met new people, rebuilt friendships. My life expanded while hers contracted. One evening, months later, I received a message from a friend. A photo of her sitting alone at a bar, her hair unkempt, her expression hollow. The caption read, "She looks lost." I stared at it for a long moment before deleting it. Her life was no longer my concern. But I knew deep down that the final chapter wasn't written yet. She had tried to humiliate me, to make me question my worth, to drag me into her chaos. And though I had walked away, the universe still had one more twist waiting. A moment where everything would come full circle. That moment arrived when I was invited to speak at a large conference in the city. By then, I had built a reputation for resilience and leadership, telling my story in a way that inspired, rather than shamed. The hall was packed, the lights bright, the applause warm as I stepped onto the stage. I began with honesty. I told them about betrayal, about discovering the child wasn't mine, about the silence I chose instead of rage. I spoke about building yourself back up, about refusing to be defined by someone else's deceit. The audience leaned in, hanging on every word. And there, near the middle rows, I saw her, my ex. She sat stiff, her face pale, her hands clenched in her lap. Around her, people applauded my words, but she sat frozen, unable to clap, unable to move. In that moment, I felt no anger, no gloating, only peace. Because the truth had done all the work for me. She had destroyed herself, and I had risen stronger than ever. But the final twist, the one nobody saw coming, was still to come. The conference ended with thunderous applause, the kind that seemed to shake the room. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in before stepping down from the stage. Attendees rushed forward, handshakes, congratulations, people telling me how much my story meant to them. In the crowd of faces, I saw hers one last time. She stood in the back, pale, stunned, like she was watching a version of me she never thought existed. Before I could blink, she slipped out the exit, disappearing into the night. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. She had already witnessed the ending she deserved, the man she tried to break standing taller than ever, celebrated while she was forgotten. In the days that followed, I thought little about her. Life moved fast. Opportunities multiplied. I was invited to speak at larger events, interviewed by local media, even asked to write about resilience. What once felt like humiliation had become fuel, and the fire burned brighter with every stage I stepped onto. People didn't know her name, they didn't know the details. All they knew was that I had faced betrayal and come out stronger. That anonymity cut her more deeply than any public naming could. She had craved attention, but she was reduced to a faceless character in my story. Meanwhile, she spiraled further. Mutual friends told me she had tried reaching out to Kyle again, only to be rejected. She had tried reconciling with her family, but they kept their distance. Her career stalled, rumors swirled, her reliability questioned. Every door she thought she had lined up closed one after another. And me? I thrived. My new apartment felt like a sanctuary. I filled it with plants, books, music, things she used to roll her eyes at. I hosted friends again, laughter echoing in a space that no longer carried tension. I learned to cook dishes I never tried before, went hiking on weekends, even took a spontaneous trip just because I could. Every moment felt lighter without her shadow hanging over me. But fate wasn't finished weaving our paths. Months later, I was at a charity gala. A formal evening, suits and gowns, champagne glasses clinking under golden lights. I was scheduled to give a short address about resilience, and I was ready. As I mingled, I caught sight of her across the room. She looked different, tired, older somehow, her smile strained. She noticed me, froze, then turned as if to leave. I walked on stage a few minutes later, the lights hot against my skin. I didn't tell the story in detail this time. I didn't need to. I simply spoke about the strength it takes to walk away from what no longer serves you, about the peace that comes when you stop clinging to lies. The applause that followed was warm, genuine. And when I glanced at her table, she was gone. That night, I realized something important. Revenge isn't about watching someone suffer. It isn't about rubbing the truth in their face until they break. It's about living so well that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. It's about rising high enough that the person who tried to bury you is left in the dust of your growth. I never heard from her again. No more texts, no more desperate emails, no more chance encounters. She became a ghost, a chapter closed. And I moved forward, one stage, one story, one moment of truth at a time. Years later, when people ask how I started this journey of speaking, I smile and tell them the truth in simple words. Someone lied to me. I chose not to lie to myself. That decision changed everything. The audience always nods, always claps. They don't need the details. They don't need her name. All they need is the lesson. Betrayal doesn't define you, your response does, and that's the ending nobody saw coming. The woman who thought she could destroy me ended up irrelevant. The man she underestimated became unforgettable. Months passed after the summit, and my life felt like it had finally reached steady ground. The storm was gone, the chaos behind me. Work flourished, speaking opportunities continued, and for the first time in years, peace wasn't something I had to fight for, it was something I lived in daily. But one evening, while I was preparing notes for another event, an envelope arrived at my door. No return address, just my name in hurried handwriting. I opened it, half expecting junk mail or a misplaced delivery. Inside was a letter, long, messy, tear-stained. It was from her. She wrote that she had hit rock bottom, that Kyle had abandoned her, that her family barely spoke to her, that friends avoided her. She said she thought about me every day, that she regretted everything, that she finally understood what she had lost. She asked, no, begged, for one chance to talk. I read it twice, then set it on the table. For a moment, old feelings tried to stir, anger, pity, the urge to answer. But then I laughed softly to myself. Not mocking, just relieved. Because in that moment, I realized how much I had changed. The man I once was might have answered. The man I was now didn't need to. The next morning, I tore the letter in half and threw it away. Weeks later, while speaking at a university, a student asked me during the Q&A, "What's the hardest part about moving on from betrayal?" I thought for a moment, then answered honestly. It's not the betrayal itself. It's realizing that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Sometimes the best closure is silence. The room fell quiet. Then applause followed. And I knew I wasn't just talking to them. I was reminding myself too. Life kept moving. I met new people, built new friendships, even opened my heart to the idea of love again. Slowly, carefully, but without fear. Because I understood now that strength doesn't mean shutting people out. It means knowing your worth so deeply that no one can take it away again. Every once in a while, I'd hear whispers about her. Sightings in town, rumors about her struggles. But she was no longer part of my story. She was just a memory, a chapter closed. And me? I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, thriving, untouchable. Because in the end, the betrayal that once threatened to destroy me became the very thing that gave me the life I was always meant to build.